Once again, I'd like to welcome everyone into our midst. And this is a podcast, and today we're going to talk about Daniel timeline and update. Why do we need an update? Because we feel that we have much more revelation that we can share with you, and that's why we have this podcast. And we will be focusing on, does the Bible give hints for the return of Yeshua? And we also want to unravel the mystery of the abomination of desolation, which have causes many people that not able to understand what it really meant. Now, in the Hebraic understanding, it could be different way of interpreting it. It could be a form of a person, and it could also be an object or a building. But whichever it is, every one of them could also hold truth. And we also want to understand the interpretation of the 1290 days as in Daniel 12 verse 11. Now again, this verse has been puzzling me for a long time until not too recently that I have discovered what it really meant for this verse, and also following on to the next verse that follows it, which is Daniel 12 verse 12, that talks about 1335 days. Now all this new revelation comes because of this man. I met Prophet Robert McWari, and he's a wonderful man of God, and he has given me so much insight into understanding the prophetic book of Daniel, and also giving me a much clearer understanding of events that are mentioned in the book of Revelation. Now I could not cover everything that this man of God has been talking about for many years, and I would encourage you to go and buy this book that he has authored, which is called The Chronogram Code. And at the same time, you can also tune on to YouTube, just Google on his name or AD 2020 to give a little bit more understanding of this man of God, that what he talked about in terms of biblical prophecy. So without further ado, we want to go on to this podcast. Now, one thing that I want to talk about is that we have been asking, when is Yeshua coming back? Is there a definite day or the definite hour for his return? But clearly, Jesus mentioned that there is no one knows, even the angels of heaven, except Abba Father knows on the hour and the actual date of Yeshua's return. But Jesus did not mention about the year, so therefore we can estimate, or we can look at what scriptures say and come to a informed decision of what this date could possibly be. Now I'm not saying that 2026, which is the date that Prophet McWari is mentioning, that it will be the actual date, but it's good to know. It's good to know and to be prepared. And henceforth, this is the things that we're going to cover tonight. So the things that I want to touch on is the book of Daniel. Now the book of Daniel is an amazing book that Daniel has been visited by the archangel Gabriel, and Gabriel gave him this prophecy, which is commonly known as the 70th week prophecy. Now let me read to you Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are determined. So it all meant that there is a total of 70 weeks, and in prophetic understanding of numbers, 17 weeks could be in days. So 70 times 7 days a week could be 490 days, and also could represent also 490 years. So here in Daniel 9:24, it says very clearly that after this period of time, 490 years, it will finish transgression, and it will be end of sins, and it will make a reconciliation of iniquity and bring in an everlasting righteousness. Now what does all this entail? I could surmise that it could mean that it would be Revelation 21:22, where it talk about the creation of the new heaven and new earth, where sin is no more abound, we have a perfect condition, and we will be with our Lord Jesus and Abba Father forever. So I believe that, and that would be the ending of the 70th week of this 70 weeks prophecy. So here, going into a greater detail on Daniel 25 and 26, knowing that, therefore, understanding that from going forth of the command to restore to build Jerusalem until the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Now, 7 plus 62 is clearly 69 weeks. And here, one thing I want to emphasize on the next verse, it says, the street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. Now, so here we ask ourselves, what is this time that it's talking about? Clearly, it says that the wall that's surrounding Jerusalem, or the temple wall, will have to be rebuilt. And it is also built under strenuous and troublesome time. We only know from the book of Nehemiah that Nehemiah was sent by the king Artaxerxes to go and rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. Now, there were many decrees that were made that talk about the Cyrus decree during the era of Ezra. But when Ezra, under the decree of King Cyrus, he returned with a band of Israelites into Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. And there was nothing to mention about the walls being rebuilt until in Nehemiah chapter 1 and also chapter 2, that talks about on the 20th year of the reign of King Artaxerxes. Now, it mentioned here clearly that the walls of Jerusalem is also broken down, as in verse 1 of Nehemiah chapter 1, and the gates are burned with fire. And in chapter 2, it talks about Nehemiah gained favor with King Artaxerxes and was allowed to return to Jerusalem to rebuild the wall. So here, following Daniel 27, it says that he shall come and confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. Now, this he is clearly is talking about someone that is important, right? Someone that is important, and we often think it is the Antichrist that will confirm a covenant, and it's only for a week. Now, a week in this context of this prophecy is 7 days, which is actually representing 7 years. But it mentioned in this verse that in the middle of the week, that means in the middle of these 7 years, or the mid point of these 7 years, he will bring an end to sacrifice. And then it mentioned that the wing of abomination shall be one who make desolate. Now, this wing of abomination in this context, we believe that it is referring to an individual, and that individual could be the Antichrist. And later on, we're going to talk about a different interpretation according to the Hebraic understanding, that it could also mean a building. Now, let's move on, and in the later slides you will get a clearer understanding of what I'm alluding to. Now, Matthew 24:15. This is the word of Jesus. When he was asked when will the tribulation comes, and he says that refers to Daniel. In the book of Daniel, he says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place. Now, in today's context, what is the holy place that we are referring to? Holy place is referring to, I believe, would be the Temple Mount, and that is where we believe that the first temple that Solomon built, followed by the second temple that King Herod enlarged, are all destroyed, and they are located, I believe, is in the Temple Mount, which represents the holy place. And here it's mentioned very clearly that Jesus says, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. Now, some teachers interpreted this as a person, which is referring to in the earlier verses that this man that come and confirm a covenant. But it could also mean a place. Now, let me explain what I learned from Prophet Mawari. Now, Prophet Mawari talks about that this desolation represents a place, and he was talking about none other than the shrine which is today known as the Golden Tomb, or the Tomb of the Rock. Now, many people have gone into this very sacred place helped by the Muslim faith, and there are YouTube that basically talk about the inside of this Dome of the Rock. And there was one commentator that said that there was inscription on the wall of this Dome of the Rock that basically says that Jesus Christ is a prophet, but not the Son of God. Now, in that sense, it is an abomination. And see what the First John chapter 4, verse 2 and 3 mention. It says, "By this you know the Spirit of God, that every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God." That means anyone that says that Jesus is not the Son of God has the spirit of Antichrist, which you have heard was coming and is already now in the world. And we believe that Antichrist is active now. He is in our midst. And we also believe that this man, which is Antichrist, will be revealed soon. So here, it clearly alluded to the fact that this Dome of the Rock, which is a sacred place held in reverence by the Muslim faith, is potentially what is mentioned by Jesus as the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. And here, Daniel 12, chapter 12, verse 11, it says, "From that time the daily sacrifice is taken away." Now, what does that mean? It basically means that from the time of the destruction of the temple of Solomon, the sacrifice is taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up. From this period of when the daily sacrifice is removed because of the destruction of the first temple, to the time where the abomination of desolation is set up, is 1290 days. Now, what is so amazing is that if you look back at history, the first temple was recorded to be destroyed on 600 BC on the 9th of Av. Now, Av is the 5th month of the Hebraic calendar, and the 9th of Av is a day that is a lot of destructions. And why did I say that? The first temple was destroyed on that particular day, 9th of Av, and the second temple also was destroyed on that particular day. So from the first temple destruction, where the daily sacrifice was taken away, to add on 1290 days will give you 690, but because of AD and BC, we add on one more year to it, and henceforth is 691 AD. Now, what is this so special about 691 AD? This is the time where the shrine, which is now known as the Dome of the Rock, was constructed and completed by this caliphate, which is known as Malik, I think. Just give me a minute. Let me get my notes on that. And this is the man that has the power and the authority to build up this shrine, and his name is Umayyad Caliph Abd Malik bin Marwan, and he is the man that constructed and completed the building of the Dome of the Rock, and that was completed in AD 691. And so the next verse that has always been troubling me too was the following verse, which is Daniel 12:12. It said, "Blessed is he who waits and come to 1335 days." Now this follows from verse 11, which talks about the abomination of desolation is set up. So from that date, which is 691 AD, if you add on to 1335 years, it comes out to 2026 AD. Now 2026 is not too far from now, and it is very troublesome to me. My spirit is heavy because we don't have much time to prepare, if indeed this is the time that Yeshua is returning. And here it says that blessed is he who waits and come into the 335 days. Now, why is it that the people who wait are blessed? I would like to refer you to Revelation 19:9. They say that blessed are those who are called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Now, that means it implies that for those who are able to attend the marriage supper of the Lamb must surely includes the bride of Christ, right? And that would also imply that the rapture of the body of Jesus or body of Yeshua, which is the bride, would have taken place in that timing too. So here it adds on a bit more um, certainty that 2026 is the possible year for the rapture of the bride of Jesus. So here, I just want you to consider this, and I pray that this is not something that will come to pass, because I believe the body of Jesus is not ready. It's not a purity of what it's really described as the bride of Christ. And so, meanwhile, I just want to encourage every one of us to read the book of Revelation in particular, and also to understand prophetic books, which will give us a clear indication of when Jesus is returning, and also to take heed that with that knowledge we will not fearful, even despite pestilence like COVID-19 or even more things to come. We will not be held in fear. So with that, I want to sign off, and I say wait for the next podcast, and I will bring to you even added revelation that the Lord has impressed on me. So goodbye, and see you next time. Bye bye.